Today on Art Matters with Mr. Morris,
we're gonna be talking about like duality in space. Yeah.
Da 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 da. Woo! Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Woo! Da 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 da. Art Matters with Mr. Morris.
Yeah. Welcome back, my artists. I want to talk to you about two things that are very important for our art making. The first one is all about balance. The second one is about something called duality. Well, really what I'm talking about is space, man.
The concept of duality deals with positive and negative forces, kind of like thinking about good versus evil or light versus darkness.
Yeah, man, so it's kind of like when the evil dragon Tiamat fought against the brave warrior Gilgamesh, man.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the basic idea. A lot of religions and a lot of cultures have this understanding of duality, meaning good versus evil.
Okay, but does duality only have to do with two opposing forces that hate each other?
Well, no, not at all. In fact, duality can also deal with two forces that are balancing each other, not necessarily in opposition, but rather they complement each other. This symbol here is called the yin yang. It's a Chinese symbol, and it represents duality. The Tao Te Ching describes it as when people see things as beautiful, ugliness is created. When people see things as good, evil is created. Being and non-being produce each other. Difficult and easy complement each other. Long and short define each other. High and low oppose each other. Fore and aft follow each other. Both sides are complementing one half of the whole, kind of like people.
So you're saying that positive and negative space are about balance and about that yin and yang, about trying to find that balance and that equilibrium in things?
Exactly, and that's what the concept of duality is. That's the definition of it. It's the idea of balancing two separate things.
So the yin and the yang, the idea behind it is duality. Duality deals with two opposing forces that balance each other out. Oh, I slipped up and said that word again, balance, which is another one of our
principles of design.
I have a video to play for you. It's talking about balance.
Don't mind me, kids. I'm just trying to balance this frame I'm hanging, trying to get it good and level. Whoa! Getting things to be balanced is sure tough sometimes. All right, there we go. So today our topic is going to be the principle of design known as balance. And that sure looks like it's on the level now. Oh, dagnabbit. To explain to you balance, first let's go to this crudely drawn scale. And you can see these two spheres are in balance. Now they're off balance. You see, when I take a small thing and I take a big thing and they're on the scale and they look like they're balanced, but they look wrong, don't they? Like the big object looks like it should tip the scale and it isn't. And it just makes things look all lopsided and all cattywampus. No, I didn't mean to put cats on the screen. I said cattywampus. It means askew, crooked. Oh, that's okay. I can work with this. You know, Mr. Morris and I, we both believe that art has solid foundation and is measurable and all those wonderful things. We know that you can teach art and that art is available for everybody. But, there's some gray areas. There's some gray areas where it sure sounds like we're talking about kittens and rainbows. Yes, folks, balance is kind of one of them. You see, as an artist, you aren't always scientifically deciding if a picture looks balanced. It's sometimes
a feeling that you feel deep inside. Balance comes from your heart. Oh, a feeling inside. Balance is something you feel.
Seriously, Lemmy, would you please just let me sleep? I mean, the singing, it can stop.
Sorry.
Now, the weird singing cat's not entirely wrong, but let me show you some ways that an artist can see if something is, in fact, balanced. To understand balance, first you're going to have to understand the difference between asymmetrical and symmetrical. Symmetrical is something that is the same on both sides. Your face, when I look at it head on, it's symmetrical. Asymmetrical means that it's not the same on both sides. For example, take a look at this image. Whew, the right and the left don't look anything the same. There are 4 types of balance: symmetrical, asymmetrical, radial balance, and crystallographic balance. Crystallographic, that's an awesome name. Now I want to start a band, Mr. Line and the Crystallographics. Even though in this artwork it's not exactly a mirror image from the right to the left, it's still very symmetrical. This artwork shows us something that's symmetrical. It's equal in size and proportion on both sides. This artwork here is showing balance, but it's not true symmetric balance. We can already see that the lady, for instance, is in this bright green dress and the man is in this very dark clothing. The man has a window next to him and the lady has a bed next to him. They're very different shapes. But the thing is that the content that's on the right and the content that's on the left, even though it's not the same, it's not symmetrical, it still shows balance. This is asymmetrical balance. This beautiful stained glass window is showing us radial balance. You can see how when we split it into 4 equal sized pieces and quarters, each one of those is a mirror image of the other. I can take any of those corners and replace them with another corner and it would still work as a symmetric image. And last, we have crystallographic balance. And you can see how M.C. Escher kind of broke all these fish and all these ducks. If you look carefully, you can see each one of those fits into a perfect little tiny cube. It's basically a grid, and the grid itself is what helps maintain the balance. Within each square of the grid, there's an equal portion of dark and an equal portion of light. Sometimes an artist uses space to also balance things out. If I look at this beautiful picture of this couple as they're standing there, there's a lot of information on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, there's a lot of big open space. So much space that it actually balances out because there's enough of information we do see, even though it's far away, that it balances out with the left side, which has all of the concentrated shapes. It just feels balanced. And what's nice about this artwork is the artist had used balance to help give us a sense of movement in the picture. That's a principle we're going to talk about later. Now I've cropped this image to be a little bit different than the original, and you can see it no longer looks or feels like it's in balance. In fact, some of you are looking at it and you feel uncomfortable. Sometimes artists will actually use imbalance to make the viewer feels about what's going on in the picture. It has an unsettling feel for our brain as our eye looks at it. Whether you can also check your artwork to see if it's balanced is simply to make it so it's balanced. For every object that you put down, you want to put down an object of equal size. If you don't, then one side starts looking heavier. But the other problem is that you can also add too much content. Every time that you use an element, you're technically going to make it heavier in that area. So if you start using too many elements, like shading, let's say, on one side of a picture and the other side's blank, well, it's going to be off balance. So that's everything I've got to say about balance, and I got my picture finally hung up nice and level before this video was over. So sometimes you gotta judge balance by what you can see and what you know, and sometimes you just gotta go by the feeling in your gut. And I guess now you can say you're on level with balance. Ha 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 ha. Man, that's why you always hire professionals to hang pictures. Till next time, I'm Mr. Lion. Well, look at the upside is now I can fit into those pants from high school again. Don't worry, kids. I'll be back again to teach you more about the principles of design.
Sometimes you're going to see space is listed as one of the elements of art. Other times, though, you're going to see that it's listed as one of the principles of design. In certain art studios, they consider space to be a principle. In other art studios, it's an element. The way I teach it is this. The elements are what make the artwork the artwork. The principles are the way in which we compose it and put it together. Another way of thinking about it is your elements of design, they're like all the musical notes and chords. But the principles of design are how you put those notes and chords together to make it into a song, or in this case, the artwork. The next couple of lessons, I'm going to be bringing up space because it's a pretty important principle of design. Can I use it as an element? Technically, yes, I kind of can. But in my opinion, it plays a bigger role in how we compose our artwork and several different areas of how we compose our artwork. So let's start talking about those. The first one being positive and negative space.
First, I get my trusty sheet of paper and I draw on it. And presto! I cut out that drawing. There we go. You notice the area where the heart was is now negative space. There's nothing there. Versus positive space. The heart itself is the positive space. The space it had been in is the negative space. Let me give you another example. First I draw some lines on here, pick up my magical pair of scissors, and 1, 2, 3, and now that we've got those shapes all cut out, I'm going to arrange them a little bit differently. So you'll see I've cut out the shapes. I'm going to shake this off. And you see I've got these two pieces. One is going to form the positive shape. The other one's going to form the negative shape. If I put them side by side, it does this really cool optical illusion. So you can see I did this with all the shapes. This is a neat piece of artwork unto itself. I thought about this being our studio, but not today. And now for our new exciting segment, Finding FRIDA. Where's FRIDA? It looks like she was here, but I only see the negative space of where she was. Oh, I found her. FRIDA, since I have you here, I have a question. What do you use negative and positive space for in your artwork?
In my artwork, I use negative space to show an emphasis on the subject of my work.
Very interesting. Thank you. So again, the way that we can tell what positive and negative space are is if we take our subject and we remove the subject from the rest of the image. So by removing the rest of the image and leaving just FRIDA's face, I am left with the subject, which would be my positive space. Sometimes identifying the positive and negative space is easy, like in this case, just look around the frog and that gives you your negative space. Or even easier, in this painting by Winslow Homer, you can see these young boys sitting and he chose to not fill in the rest of the image. He left it as negative space around these figures. In this way, he puts an emphasis, there's emphasis, another one of our principles of design. He put an emphasis on the boys and wasn't concerned about the rest of the image. Remember, a lot of art tells a story, and in this case, the background, what was around these boys, wasn't important to the narrative, to the story itself. But positive and negative doesn't necessarily have to be the area around the subject. In this image of a hedgehog, you can see that the artist is using the positive and negative space to create the entire image. The negative space is the area where the artist did not add any material to the paper or the support, whereas the black is representing the area where they have added material to the paper or the support. They've added something, so it's positive, and where they didn't add something, it's negative. Sometimes it's this difference that we're also referring to when we talk about positive and negative space. In this photograph negative, you can see that the areas that are dark would be considered to be positive, and the areas that are white would be considered to be negative. Of course, we know that the photo itself has the subject, and there's also the positive and negative space around the subject. But when you see a piece of artwork or an image like this, you want to consider how is the space distributed. In this case, we can say that the image itself is made of just positive and negative space. In this image, you can see that the positive and negative space create the entire image. The faces would not exist if it wasn't for the negative, and we wouldn't recognize that they were faces if it wasn't for the positive. In this way, positive and negative can also be flipped and flopped. Maybe the background of this image was originally black, and the artist used something that was in white to create the image. Maybe it was in white and the artist used something that was black. Sometimes positive and negative shapes and space, well, they can be considered one way or the other. It just depends on the viewer's perspective. These two artworks are made by the same artist. As you can see on the image on the left of the carnival, there's very little negative space in the sense that the artist has covered all of his base of white. There's no white really showing anymore, so we could say that he has removed his negative space. In the second image, though, on the right, you can see that he used his negative space, or the original white of the paper he was painting on, to his advantage, because here he added very little in ways of medium and ways of color onto this image, and he used the negative space or the white paper to represent that pale sky, to represent the snow on the ground and on the buildings themselves. In this way, the artist is employing negative space as a tool to help create the image itself. The artist M.C. Escher in this image has used the positive and negative space to create an optical illusion. In one direction, you'll see that there are geese that are white and they're flying to the right. On the other direction, you see geese that are black and they are flying to the left. The artist has used the negative space, however, around those white geese to transform that negative space into the black geese. And the same thing goes, where you see the black geese and the white areas or negative space between them, that becomes the white geese on the other side. M.C. Escher played a lot with positive and negative space and transforming our perception of what that space is. In that way, he's showing us that negative and positive can both become the subject in certain artworks.
So today we talked about balance as a principle of design, and we talked about space as a principle of design and why we're not counting it entirely as an element of art. We talked about duality, or the idea of the balance between two opposing forces. With that duality, we talked about positive and negative space. We talked about how the negative space is the area around the subject, while the positive space is the subject itself. All right, my artists, until next time, you cool cats, just want to say, be kind to yourself. Keep on making art. Keep on keeping on, and seek to be one with the universe. I'm Mr. Morris, and I'm out of here.